This is a little bit different of a video than I normally do, but nonetheless a good story. In December, I had an opportunity to sit down and have a chat with J.P. Pennington, lead singer and musician with the group Exile. And he told me a story about a song that he had written that appeared on the 1978 Exile album, which the name of the album was Mixed Emotions, and produced the hit single Kiss You All Over. There was a filler song on that album called Never Gonna Stop that JP wrote, and there's a very interesting story about what happened to that song after years later, after the Mixed Emotions album was released. Now, anyone who knows anything about JP's career knows he's written a lot of hit records. He's co-written songs and put a lot of music on the charts, namely two big number one hits by the country group Alabama, The Closer You Get, which was originally recorded by Exile and only to become a big hit later on for Alabama, and the song Take Me Down, which Alabama took to number one. JP co-wrote those songs and had a lot of success with those as a songwriter. If you know anything about the music business, songwriters are very well compensated when they write hit records. I've often heard people say songwriter gets the biggest chunk of the pie in the industry. Sometimes they talk about royalties coming from songs that you write, and they refer to it as mailbox money. You go open your mail and get your check, and that's the way things used to work back in the day and still do to some extent today. But JP shared with me a story about his number one earning song, a song that most people may or may not have ever heard. It certainly was not a hit for Exile, and it was just a filler track on the Mixed Emotions album, which was released in 1978. In February of 1996, a West Coast rap artist by the name of Tupac Shakur released an album called All Eyez on Me. That album was released in February of 96. Later on that year, in September of 96, Tupac was shot and killed in Las Vegas. And as is normally the case after his death, the album sales for Tupac's All Eyez on Me, which was a double CD set, shot through the roof. What's the connection between J.P. Pennington of Exile and Tupac? Well, the song Never Gonna Stop from Exile's 1978 album Mixed Emotions, which was written by JP, ended up being sampled by Tupac on the title track of the album All Eyez on Me. As JP said, they took the bass line and little scratch guitar and drum pattern from the beginning of the song and built the entire song, All Eyez on Me by Tupac, around that riff from JP's song, Never Gonna Stop. As I said, Never Gonna Stop by Exile in 78 was never released as a single, and All Eyez on Me, the track All Eyez on Me from the album All Eyez on Me, was never released as a single by Tupac, but it has been played tens of millions of times. It has been streamed tens and hundreds of millions of times online. I asked JP in our conversation, how in the world would Tupac have ever heard of an obscure track by Exile from a 1978 album in order to record it in around 95, 96, some 18 years later? And I think I have found that bridge, that link between Exile and Tupac. That connection between Exile and Tupac was from an R&B soul singer by the name of Linda Clifford. And in 1979, the year after the Mixed Emotions album by Exile, Linda Clifford released an album called Here's My Love. And she released as one of the songs on that album the very same Exile song, the very same song that JP had written, Never Gonna Stop. So it's very likely that Tupac and his associates may have never heard the Exile version, but they certainly heard the Linda Clifford version. And in the process of obtaining permissions and giving credit where credit is due to songwriters, Linda Clifford had credited J.P. Pennington as the songwriter because he wrote it. When Tupac sampled it and wrote the song and composed the song All Eyez on Me, J.P. Pennington was one of 4 credited songwriters because they sampled that guitar, bass, and drum lick at the beginning of the song. And I want you to get a little bit of sample of each. Here is the Exile version of Never Gonna Stop from the album Mixed Emotions in 1978. Notice the guitar, bass, and drum lick. It's a very unique riff that can't be mistaken as to the fact that it's a JP riff for sure, because JP's always had a little bit of R&B in his background and in his compositions. Now I want to give you a little bit of a sample of the Linda Clifford version of Never Gonna Stop, the same track that Exile did the year before in 78. She turned around and released it in 79. This is Linda Clifford's version of Never Gonna Stop. You can hear that same bass, same drum, and same guitar scratch. She added the Never Gonna Stop over the top as sort of an intro to the song. Okay, we've got Never Gonna Stop, written by JP on the Exile album, Mixed Emotions in 78. And we got Linda Clifford's Never Gonna Stop from the Here's My Love album in 1979. And somewhere along the line, Tupac ran across one or the other. More than likely, he ran across the Linda Clifford version and sampled it, and JP became 1/4 credit songwriter on Tupac's track called All Eyez on Me, the title track of a double CD set. And here's just a little sample of the Tupac song, and you'll be able to hear the sample that was taken from JP's composition.
Big sight, new, hey, go, big sight. Y'all know how this shit go, you know. All eyes on me. Roll up in the club. All eyes on me.
So there you go. Isn't that amazing to hear? Now, somewhere around 96, 97, JP said he went to the mailbox and he had a substantial check in the mail from the agency that represents him in his songwriting, and he had no idea what the check was even for. So he called up the, I don't know, it was BMI, ASCAP, or whoever he's licensed through, and asked him, what's this check all about? And they said, well, it's probably just one of many more that's going to be coming your way. And they told him the story about Tupac having sampled it, and that he was shot and killed in 96, and the album sales are going through the roof. And the rest is history. Exile's Never Gonna Stop became Linda Clifford's Never Gonna Stop. And 18 years after the Exile release, it became All Eyez on Me by Tupac. If you go to YouTube, you will see that The track All Eyes on Me, which was never a single, it was the title track and one of the songs on a double disc set. But on YouTube alone, it has been streamed 82 million times. Now you factor in Pandora and Spotify and all the other music services, hundreds of millions of streams of the track All Eyes on Me, in which JP was a 1/4 credited songwriter. And so, an obscure Exile track, which was never released as a single, became JP's all-time earning composition. That's how it happened. The connection between JP Pennington of Exile and Tupac.